It was just past 4:30 p.m. when officers Daniel Brooks and Melissa Carter rolled down Maple Avenue in their patrol car, the sky turning a lazy orange with the early fall sunset. It had been a slow shift, no calls, no disturbances, just the occasional traffic stop and waving at the kids playing in the schoolyard. Daniel was mid-conversation about how he planned to spend his weekend when Melissa tapped his arm. "Wait, look over there." Asterisk at the corner of the street, next to a weather-worn stop sign, stood a small girl. She was no older than 8, her tiny frame swallowed in a faded red hoodie that hung below her knees. One of her shoes looked too big for her foot, the other was missing its strap. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail as if she'd tried to do it herself. But what stopped them both cold wasn't her appearance, it was the way she looked at them. Straight in the eyes, no panic. No tears, just a calmness that didn't belong to a child. Asterisk, the cruiser slowed, and Daniel rolled the window down. Asterisk. "Hey, sweetheart," he said gently. "Are you lost?" Asterisk, she shook her head slowly. "No, but I need you to follow me to my house." Asterisk, Melissa leaned forward. "Is someone hurt?" Asterisk, the girl hesitated. "Sort of, she won't wake up much." Asterisk, Daniel and Melissa exchanged a look. There was no distress call, no welfare check request. But their instincts kicked in, something wasn't right. Asterisk, "What's your name?" Melissa asked. "Ava," she replied. "All right, Ava," Daniel said. "You lead the way. We'll walk with you." Asterisk, Ava turned and began walking silently down the sidewalk, hugging her stuffed bear close to her chest. With each step, her little body seemed to sag, not from tiredness, but from the weight of something heavier. They passed rusted fences, cracked driveways, and overgrown hedges until she stopped in front of a dull blue house with peeling paint and a front porch sagging at the corners. Asterisk, the yard was cluttered with old toys, some broken, some weathered beyond recognition. A tricycle lay on its side, its back wheel missing. The windows were shut tightly, curtains drawn like they were hiding from the world. There was no sound, no television inside, no barking dog, no adult yelling for her to come in. Asterisk, Ava stepped onto the porch and stood before the front door. She looked back at the officers, her voice barely a whisper. "I think you need to see for yourselves now." Asterisk, Daniel's hand naturally fell to his sidearm, not in threat, but precaution. Melissa stepped beside the girl. "Is your mom inside?" Asterisk, Ava nodded. "She's been sleeping a long time." Asterisk, Melissa pressed the doorbell, no chime. Daniel knocked twice, hard, silence. Asterisk, "Is the door locked?" he asked. Asterisk, double quote. "No, I don't lock it anymore," Ava said. Then she reached up, turned the brass doorknob with a squeak, and slowly pushed the door open. Asterisk, the scent hit them first. A musty mix of spoiled food, dirty laundry, and something deeper, decay, maybe even despair. The lights were off, the inside dim and shadowy. The living room was frozen. In time, an open pizza box sat on the floor. Unwashed dishes filled a table by the wall. Flies buzzed near the sink in the kitchen, just visible through a narrow hallway. Asterisk, and then they saw her. Asterisk, a woman in her mid-30s was slumped sideways on a torn brown couch. Her skin was ghostly pale, her eyes barely open, fluttering like she was dreaming something terrible. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. A blanket half covered her body, and her arms were thin, dangerously thin. Empty pill bottles sat on the floor beneath her hand. Asterisk, Ava didn't run to her. She didn't cry. She just stood by the door and said, "She didn't want me to call anyone." But I didn't know what else to do. Asterisk, Daniel stepped in quickly, checking the woman's pulse. It was their dash barely. Asterisk, Melissa pulled her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter requesting immediate medical assistance at 2824 Maple Avenue. Adult female, unconscious, shallow breathing, possible overdose or medical neglect. Minor present." Asterisk, as the call went out, Ava finally took a step forward into the living room and looked at them with the smallest hint of hope. "I just wanted someone to come see." "I've been waiting." Paramedics arrived within 7 minutes, lights flashing across the faded walls of the house. The narrow living room barely had space for them to work as they carefully examined Ava's mother. An oxygen mask was gently placed over her mouth, and the lead medic whispered to the team, "She's malnourished, maybe hasn't eaten in days. Blood pressure's barely holding." Daniel watched the little girl as she stood in the hallway, arms wrapped tightly around her stuffed bear. She wasn't frightened, not in the way most kids would be. Instead, there was a quiet resignation. In her eyes, like she had expected this moment to come and had already rehearsed it in her head. Melissa knelt beside her. "Ava, when was the last time your mom spoke to you?" Ava thought for a long second. 2 days ago. She asked if I could heat up the soup, but the stove doesn't work, so I gave her crackers and water. Her voice didn't waver. She was composed. Daniel returned from the kitchen, holding a nearly empty box of crackers and a half-full gallon of water. "That's all I could find. No power, no gas. The fridge is room temperature. Where have you been?" "Sleeping?" Melissa asked. Ava pointed down the hall. "My room." I made a chart to remember what to do each day. The officers followed her down the narrow hallway, where peeling paint lined the walls and the floor creaked with every step. Ava's bedroom was small but strangely tidy. A mattress lay on the floor with a pink blanket folded neatly at the corner. On the wall was a handmade calendar drawn in crayon. Each day had tiny notes. Brush teeth, check mommy. Put water in bowl for Goldie. Be brave. Who's Goldie? Daniel asked gently. Ava looked down. My fish, she died last week. I buried her in a cereal box outside. Melissa felt a lump rise in her throat. The girl had taken care of herself, her pet, and her unconscious mother without a single soul noticing. No school had reported her absence. No neighbors had called anything in. It was as if she and her mother had faded off the grid and no one realized they were gone. Daniel opened the closet. Inside were neatly folded clothes, likely all arranged by Ava, and a small pile of canned goods. The labels were scribbled on in marker, "Not yet," "Emergency," and "Only if really hungry." Sweetheart, Melissa asked. Why didn't you tell someone earlier? Ava's eyes didn't move. I didn't want them to take me away. By the time the mother was wheeled out on a stretcher, her eyelids fluttered open for a brief second. She mumbled something barely audible. She said, Ava? Daniel whispered. Ava followed the gurney to the porch but stopped at the threshold, not stepping outside. Can I ride with her? Melissa hesitated. We'll meet you there, okay? They need to take care of her now. And we're going to make sure you're safe too. Ava nodded. She didn't cry. She just stood there silently as the ambulance pulled away, her small face barely visible in the fading light. It wasn't until the sirens disappeared that she finally whispered, she tried her best, even when it got really bad. At the hospital, while her mother was stabilized, Ava was given a warm meal and a quiet room to rest. But rest didn't come easily. She kept asking questions no child should have to worry about. Are they going to take my mom to jail? No, honey, Melissa said gently. Your mom was sick. She needed help. I tried to fix her. I read on the internet that if someone drinks water and lays down a lot, they can feel better. Melissa hugged her tightly. You did more than anyone could have asked for. Back at the station, Daniel filed the initial report, pausing over. The line marked Child's Statement. How do you explain strength in a form meant for incidents and injuries? He wrote only one line. Child kept mother alive for at least 2 weeks with no support, no electricity, and no food. The officers called social services, carefully explaining that this case wasn't a simple removal. This was a survival story. The agency arranged for Ava to be placed in temporary foster care close to the hospital, but Ava kept asking, can I visit her soon? I need to remind her that I'm okay too. Carter made a few quiet calls to a friend who worked with trauma families. She made it clear this girl needed more than just a bed. She needed peace, stability, and people who didn't see her as a case file. Meanwhile, Ava was placed with a kind foster family, who welcomed her gently, letting her choose the color of her new blanket and stocking the pantry with the snacks she liked. It wasn't home, but it was safe. And that was a start, 1 week. Later, Daniel and Melissa took her to see her mother at the rehabilitation wing of the hospital. Her mother was still weak, still struggling, but awake. When Ava entered the room, she didn't run into her arms. She simply walked up, took her hand, and whispered, "I kept us alive." Her mother cried. For the first time in months, as they left, Melissa glanced at Daniel and said, "You know, that girl didn't just save her mother. She saved herself too." "The strongest kid I've ever met," Daniel nodded. "And she never screamed." "Not once, just asked us to follow her." She'd been carrying the whole world and finally decided to share the weight. At the hospital, Ava sat in a quiet waiting room with Officer Carter beside her, clutching her stuffed bear. Nurses rushed past with clipboards and the hum of machines echoed from nearby halls. But Ava sat still, staring at the floor. "They're not going to separate us forever, right?" she asked softly. Melissa placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're going to do everything we can to keep you close. You did the right thing, Ava." Meanwhile, Officer Brooks stood in the social worker's office explaining the situation. "This isn't abandonment or abuse in the usual sense," he said. "This mother was sick. That little girl held her world together for as long as humanly possible. The agency agreed Ava would be placed with a foster family nearby with regular visits to the hospital arranged. When Ava visited her mom for the first time, her mom could barely speak but reached out and squeezed Ava's hand. Ava leaned in and whispered, "You're going to be okay now. I brought help." In the following weeks, as Julia recovered, Ava kept visiting. She read books to her mom, brought her colored drawings, and every time she left, she'd say, "Don't forget I'm okay too." When they were finally reunited months later, in a modest apartment provided by a community program, Julia knelt and hugged her daughter for a long, tearful minute. Ava whispered, "I kept us alive. Now it's your turn to keep us going." And for the first time, they both felt safe.